Joe, episode what are we on now?
We're on episode 17, Bob.
It's episode 17 in the Bushes podcast. I'm joined today by Matt Solter, one of our pro ball guys that comes in and trains here now. Excited to have him on. He's actually going to be working Saturdays for us here at BYoung, which is exciting to have another guy that, understands baseball and player development, being able to work on the weekends. So Matt, thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
Yeah, man. So let's just talk, early beginnings here. Born in Quantico, Virginia, home of the CIA.
Yep.
Was your dad or parents or anybody involved in the CIA or government? What was kind of that like?
No CIA, but my dad was in the Marine Corps for
Got it.
22 years. So
Good deal.
that's where he was initially stationed.
Good deal. So that obviously you moved around a lot, I would imagine. What were some of the pit stops that you guys made?
It was pretty much 3 states. It was Washington State,
Okay.
Texas, and North Carolina were the three for my dad's plane.
Where at in Washington?
I was Anacortes and Oak Harbor.
Got it. Okay. And then ended up, putting roots down here in North Carolina, New Bern. What was it like growing up? I guess how far is New Bern from here?
2.5 hours.
Yeah, so not too
Well
bad.
under.
Towards the coast.
Yep.
So, growing up there, did you grow up an East Carolina fan at all, or was that like kind of a dream school of yours?
No, it was actually North Carolina.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
it?
when I first moved to North Carolina, I was physically cornered by two groups of people, and they said, "Do you like Carolina or do you like Duke?" And I kind of had to make the decision right there. No love for State, no love for ECU at the time.
Fair. What was the reason? Just the color scheme, you think, or why UNC?
It just felt right.
It just felt right. Right. That's fair, and that's kind of, for everyone that lives around here, I feel like that's how life is. That you better pick, right?
Yeah.
Either UNC or Duke, and you have to stick to your guns because if you choose to waver on it, then people are gonna know.
Exactly.
So, are you still a UNC fan then?
Yeah, I haven't paid as much attention over the last couple of years as I've
Okay.
gotten older and gotten further away from it. But high school, college, die hard.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Obviously going to high school around here, what high school exactly?
New Bern High
So
School.
New Bern High School. What's your high school career like? Did you guys win any state championships when you were there or anything like that?
No state championships. I think we technically split the conference championship my junior year.
Okay.
But yeah, solid group of guys. But just North Carolina's a tough state to
Yeah.
be playing in.
A lot of good players. So yeah, then we let's fast forward a little bit. We go to Furman College in
Mhm.
South Carolina. How did you end up there? What was kind of the journey like, recruiting process, and those type of things?
Yeah, I wasn't really heavily recruited. I didn't start pitching until my senior year of high school, really, or that summer before.
Sure.
My catcher, David Hauser, him and his dad knew the pitching coach at the time, Britt Reams at Furman, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of I don't even know what the best way to say it was. Under recruited for sure, but such a late bloomer that nobody really had a chance to know what was going on there.
Right.
They knew Britt, so they threw me on his radar. Went to a few camps there, and after camp or two, they decided to make me an offer.
Yeah. And that's, you said late bloomer. I think I've said that a few times on this podcast now. Usually the late bloomers, in my opinion, are usually the better players. And I don't know if it's just because there's more time to develop or if it's you go through that growth spurt at a younger age and you have more time. I don't know what it is. What do you think allowed you to be that late bloomer? What kind of clicked for you later on in your career?
I think just I was so bad at baseball growing up. So a little
Okay.
quick sidebar: my mom physically would cry when they would put me in games because I was so embarrassing.
Really?
So I think it was
At every position or like hitting or
pitching, hitting. It was
everything?
it was bad. It
Really?
was bad. Yeah.
Okay.
So I always had a drive and a determination. I always wanted to play,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess for me, it just took all those extra years of trying really hard to
Yeah.
to be something.
Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, and that's the thing. So many kids get wrapped up in, oh, I went, at 9 years old, I went over 4, I gave up 5 runs. And you have to like sit back and really remind a lot of these parents that, hey, we're not getting recruited at 9 years old.
Mhm.
As much as we want, your kid to succeed and to do well and to be the best player on the team, sometimes it's a good thing to be in those lesser roles younger because I think it kind of breeds competition in a way of like you're always trying to catch somebody and you're not always the best player.
For sure.
What do you think from a competition standpoint? Is that something that you would agree with? That drive that you're saying you had was kind of harvested in those times where maybe we weren't the best player on the team.
For sure. I think whether it was a desire to prove what I had when I had the chance,
Yeah.
or believing that I was better than I was when I wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely made me a competitor first.
Yeah.
And when I got into like more, I guess, middle school age, and I was always known for competing. I wasn't
Right.
very good, but I could, in a big situation, I was usually going to be okay.
Yeah. That's something you haven't had a whole lot of time here yet as far as like with the whole group, but with the high school kids here now, competition's a big part of what we do because of that. A lot of the kids that come in here aren't necessarily the best players on their team and they're here to get better, right?
Hmm.
I think, part of that we need to learn how to compete and compete hard and compete against guys. Whether that's one-on-one basketball or, Proteus numbers, route running one-on-ones, things like that. And I just think they're so important for development just because not everyone's going to be so good when it comes to just baseball, like you're saying.
Hmm.
Like there has to be that element of just you gotta have that dog in you, I guess, is what
Exactly.
people say nowadays. So,
Exactly.
learning that at a young age is crucial, I think. So,
Yeah. And
um,
that's really when I got better too. It was really a showcase team. I played with the Canes.
mhm,
I was not anywhere close to the caliber of these guys, and
right,
this was my junior year, and I was definitely like the last man out,
mhm,
and first man in, last man out, and after that summer is when things finally clicked for me. I started kind of having that dog in me and understanding, what I could do, and physically I developed in that time too, surrounding myself with guys who were way better than me.
yeah. What age was that?
I was like 15, 16.
Gotcha. Okay, so like we get to Furman, right? Kind of going back to that. Your freshman year, did you have that wake up call when you got to Furman? Being a freshman, like how was that? So many people talk about going in their freshman year, they're not always the best player,
Mhm.
but I think that's probably happens more times than not. Um, just because you have to adapt to a new game and you're playing with guys that are, 21 years old,
Mhm.
right? And you're 17, 18. So, what was that process like going from high school, playing the travel ball with the Canes, things like that, but now we're in college, what was that like for you?
Yeah, you get there. I didn't really have an idea one way or the other. Didn't have much guidance as far as what college would be like or what to expect. Just kind of went in eyes wide open and figuring it out. And
Sure.
you jump right into individuals, get working. Just kind of figuring out from there. You get into fall ball and you start
Yeah.
playing, and have a little bit of success. And um, you know, kind of found myself in a position where I was able to throw a lot as a freshman.
Nice. What was that like? I mean, was there struggles, ups and downs, or were you just kind of like, oh, you're the dude from the jump?
There were some struggles,
Yeah.
whether it's command, walking too many guys. Each level you go up, I feel like walks hurt you more and more. Guys
Hmm.
get better and better, can punish you more and more.
Sure.
Yeah, but really, most of my college career was just more trying to be a bulldog. It wasn't really pitching. It was me
Yeah.
just in ultimate competition mode all the time,
Hmm.
which had its benefits. But I feel like I could have learned a lot more and done a lot better.
Right. And that's, I think a lot of colleges are like that. No matter where you go, you learn to compete first and foremost. Sometimes the pitching is, from a development side can lack, and that's not just at Furman. That's at a lot of different places. So, is that something where you kind of went out on your own to find advice, or you just you were having success, you're competing your butt off, and you didn't think you needed to go anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably closer to my junior year. I started training at, a different facility, or I guess my first facility, and,
Hmm.
kind of learn more about training, try to bring some of that back to school. But,
Sure.
a lot of button heads there with, people wanting things done their way, which I understand. But,
Hmm.
invested a lot of time in whether it was, winter break training or wherever
Right.
during the summer as well. And just finding ways to mold myself into, what I thought I should be.
Well, how do you work around that? There's so many college coaches, high school coaches that may be hesitant to allow their guys to find and seek their player development plans somewhere else. And I get it. You want your guys to be in house. You want to be part of a team, but at the end of the day, you have to worry about your career and your own development. Um, so what was that like?
That was tough. That was
Yeah.
probably the hardest part of college.
Yeah.
I would do all this stuff. I would bring it back, try and have, pretty open and honest conversations with the
Hmm.
coaches, with some of the strength staff about things that, thought could maybe help here or there. And I was a health sciences guy at the time too. So I was starting to have a little bit of a background in the physiology thing.
Sure.
Um, and then eventually, and this probably wasn't the best way to do it, but I would go to the rec center every morning, do the lifts that I know I needed to do,
Yeah.
and then kind of coast through the lifts that they had us doing, or
Yeah.
things like that. Which, looking back, probably could have done things a little differently, but I felt like I had to be doing those things to be successful.
Well, if you had to go back, and change some of those things, how would you approach that now?
Probably just finding ways to work it in at the during the team lifts,
Yeah.
especially as I got older. It probably didn't look too good, me doing my own things, then kind of coasting through, like, technically my second lift of the day.
Yeah.
But I guess always knowing, and I knew in my heart that what I was doing is right, but the way I went about it probably could have been better.
Gotcha. Well, and it's tough because, we have my high school kid in here now that is taking a strength in or a weightlifting class, I guess, and he's lifting 2 times a day. And it's like, how do you approach that, right? For somebody in my shoes, how what's the best way to make sure that no one's feelings get hurt, right?
Mhm.
And then allow them to see like, hey, maybe what they're doing over there, isn't the best for the kid or is the best for the kid, I should say. And then, what I'm doing, as a high school coach, it's like maybe, hey, maybe I allow it to happen. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And not get allow myself to have, insecurities or my feelings get hurt,
Yeah.
So that's definitely a balance. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to those kids that are in those kind of scenarios?
Just try and have as open and honest dialogue as you can, understanding where your goals are,
Mhm.
understanding developmentally where you need to be.
Right.
Um, hoping that people can put their egos aside and have a conversation, because at the end of the day, it's not about the coaches, it's about the kid.
100%.
And if you can find some common ground, then you can probably
Yeah.
maybe turn the first lift into a mobility session with them, or
Mhm.
vice versa.
For sure. So being at Furman, let's go back to that. You know, have a pretty successful college career. Obviously, you get drafted, right?
Not drafted.
Not drafted,
Yeah.
undrafted.
Yeah. Undrafted.
So
Thought I
okay,
was going to get drafted,
okay. So kind
like
of
every
walk me
other guy.
through that as being an undrafted free agent, and that whole process. I know it's a completely different world there, where it's
Mhm.
like if we don't get drafted, we're not maybe the most important guys, so to speak.
Mhm.
But there's so many undrafted free agents that end up making it. And I think that speaks to just baseball as a whole. Like it doesn't really matter where you start, right? It's how you perform when you get there.
For sure.
Um, but at the end of the day, I'm sure you had doubts and thoughts like, well, I'm playing with house money at this point.
Mhm.
So what was that process like, being an undrafted guy going into, did you have to go to instructs or anything after you got drafted?
No, just went to indie ball and
Really?
then figured it out from there.
Okay. Oh, so
So,
you went to indie ball first.
yep,
Oh, okay.
yep,
Got it. I didn't know that.
yep,
Okay. So we went to indie ball first.
yep. So
Let's
yeah,
talk about that then. Because I thought it was a draft to indie ball.
I wish
Okay.
that'd
So
be cool.
indie ball to draft. All right. Well, I like that story better. So let's go to indie ball. You get undrafted. Where do we go next?
So I went to Gary, Indiana. Which,
Okay.
for anybody who knows indie ball, knows that, especially at the time, this was 2015,
Mm-hmm.
tough place to be.
Yeah. Heard
But
stories.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so finished. Luckily, my pitching coach, Brett Harker, he knew the pitching coach there with the
Mm-hmm.
Gary Railcats, Alan Keanu, got me a little workout with them and did well. And then pretty much ended up there for the next month and a half, 2 months to finish the season. And that's
Gotcha.
kind of my first taste of, pro ball. Indie ball's a little different back then, but,
Right.
still playing against some really good competition,
Sure.
former major leaguers that are finding their way back. So.
Yeah. What do you think? What's the best indie ball story that you have as far as like that's indie ball? You know what I mean? Like that. What's
Oh
something that
boy.
kind of encompasses what independent baseball is? You got anything?
I guess kind of my first taste of things when I first got there in Gary, they didn't have like a host family or anything set up.
Hmm.
So it was me and a bunch of other guys. We were sleeping in the clubhouse on these air mattresses, and they would deflate halfway through the night. And so you pretty much finish the night on the ground.
Really?
Guys grinding that out until they either got released or got a chance, and then they figured out where they wanted to put them.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
crazy.
I guess kind of after that, I'd thrown well in like two piggybacks that I had as part of the
Hmm.
after that actual tryout. It was pitching in games. I did well. Night before a road trip, the manager calls me and says, "Hey, you've impressed us. You've definitely made the team. Like, get ready, pack your stuff for tomorrow." They call me at 6 a.m. in the morning and they're like, "Hey, actually, we just got a bat that we really like, so we're going to release you, but we want
Oh
you
my
to stay
God.
here." So I stayed in
Really?
Gary for 2 weeks, just staying ready by myself until they
Really?
came back, and then rejoined and was with them
Gotcha.
for the rest of the year.
So how does that work? So they put you on like, is it like a day-to-day type contract? Like,
Oh, I was not under contract at that point.
really?
Yep. So they
Okay.
straight up released me, and then when they came back, they brought me back.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's confusing. Um, so how is that like mentally? How do you handle that? So many times you said stay ready. But I'm sure again there's emotions going through that's like, screw this dude. Like, what this guy? Why am I here?
Yeah.
What I could be doing this. How did you handle that mentally?
Luckily, I've always just been so headstrong and just pushing forward that none of that, like, releases happen, whatever happens, it never really bothered me. Like,
Hmm.
in the moment, you're just like, oh, that kind of sucks, but like, I know
Yeah.
it's going to work out. So let's just keep going, stay ready. And, I guess that ties back into being competitive and having that bulldog in you when you do get the chance. You've kind of, stoked the flames a little bit.
Sure. So like we go through that. Um, how did the rest of that year go?
Solid. Finished with like a 3-4 on the year. Was more of in a like long relief bullpen role.
Hmm.
Was able to pitch pretty well. And then that next off season, luckily was able to get signed by the Giants.
Yeah. So obviously you had took a little detour route, right?
Hmm.
To get to affiliated baseball. What were the emotions that you felt when you finally like the Giants called and they offered you what they offered you, and you're part of professional baseball that it
Hmm.
now as. So what was it like? What were the emotions that were going through you?
I mean, it was a complete blur of emotions. Calling my
Yeah.
family, everybody crying,
Yeah.
knowing how much I'd put into it. It was really just a whirlwind. My parents were at the country club with doing some stuff at the time, so I went over there, and
Hmm.
it became a full on party. It
Really?
was words can't really describe it because it was a validation of one, what I thought I was capable of,
Sure.
and at the time, and two, how much work I'd really put into
Hmm.
achieving that goal.
And what year was this?
This was 2016.
Gotcha. What
Yep.
was the Giants, I'd like to say, are one, I don't know what they're at now, but they were at the forefront of a lot of analytics and things like that at the time. What was something that really stuck out to them about you? Like, what was it, do you think, that made you a guy from indie ball that they're willing to take a chance on?
It's probably well, the velocity was solid at the time. It was probably similar to what the Indians said when they ended up signing me, which we'll get to later. But
Hmm.
that had interesting movement profile on all my stuff,
Yeah.
so it wasn't stock or anything. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah. And then we'll talk. I want to talk a little bit about your arsenal and things here a little bit later. It is interesting, which I think at the end of the day, a lot of teams and organizations, they want interesting.
Hmm.
They want outliers. They
Yep.
don't want the norm. They don't want stock. So as far as you can separate yourself, whether it's on a TrackMan plot, a velocity, or a VAA or whatever it may be, there's got to be something that orgs like.
Hmm.
So and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But playing for the Giants, how was that? What did you learn about yourself? What were some things that they wanted you to get better at or to improve? What was their development plan for you?
Unfortunately, there really wasn't much of one. Like, looking back, I was probably more of an organizational filler guy.
Hmm.
Um, my focus was just go out and throw up zeros as much as I can.
Sure.
I didn't really think about pitch design or anything like that. It was just go out and pretty much survive. Like
Yeah,
you said, house money, plan on borrowed time,
might as well.
just go out, figure it out. And ended up having a really rough first year.
Yeah.
I kind of tweaked my shoulder in my first start. Didn't tell anybody, and my velo dipped a lot,
Yeah.
and it was just pretty much survival mode. I'd either go 7 shutty or I'd give up 8 and 5. There was
Yeah.
no in between.
Right. Yeah, that's tough. And that's what a lot of people don't really realize is that so many of these guys, I mean, you're never playing at 100%. And if something happens, especially early, and you're just playing catch up at that point.
Hmm.
You're always just trying to get back to just feeling a little bit better, and it's so hard when you're pitching every 4 days and you have a bullpen in between.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, we get to the Giants. What was the journey like to the Indians now,
So that
or the
was
Guardians now, I should say. Sorry.
yeah. So I was with the Giants through spring of 2018.
Uh-huh.
I was the last guy they cut in 2018.
Okay.
Went back to indie ball that year.
Which
Which
team?
that was St. Paul, the St. Paul
Oh, okay.
Saints. They're now AAA with the
That's a better
Twins,
spot
but
than Gary, I would imagine.
way better. That was kind of the Yankees of indie ball at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Beautiful stadium. They treated you incredibly well.
Hmm.
So yeah, pitched there that year. Had an okay year. Again, the velo was still down. Hadn't really bounced back from the shoulder kind of tweaking. After that off season, I went back to the facility I was training at, worked hard there, and Velo bounced back a little bit.
Hmm.
And then the Indians signed me off of a Twitter video.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So that was it, like the Flat app or whatever, or what?
It was kind of that, but the trainer or the head guy at the place I was training, he tweeted it out showing I had an elite deceleration pattern because I was throwing indoor with a little tile strip right off the edge of the mound,
Okay.
and I slipped and I completely wiped out. But it was 94, kind of with some run on it,
Really?
and so one of the Matt Blake, who's now the pitching coach with the Yankees,
Sure. Yeah.
he was the assistant minor league coordinator with the Indians.
Okay.
He reached out to my trainer. They talked. Then I ended up talking with Matt, and then they made me an offer pretty much the next
Is
day.
that right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Like you see a lot. That's how a lot of this recruiting and people getting signed happens nowadays. Like
Hmm.
it's been that way for, I guess, since then. I mean, that was kind of newer. Was that newer for
Yeah,
that kind of?
Flat app was kind of
Yeah,
being really popular. Where if they retweeted something, it was generally getting
some
pretty substantial amount of
buzz.
views.
Yeah. But there's so many guys now that, like, we released a video of one of our high school guys, and all of a sudden it was like there's four colleges that wanted to watch him throw, and
Hmm.
it's such a different world that me and you were on the same age, so it's something that when we were younger, just that wasn't how it was.
Yep.
So what do you think, like, as far as technology and things like that go? What's your opinion on it?
I love it because I
Yeah.
think it makes guys unable to get passed over as much. If there's a guy at a really small school in a really small town, but if he's throwing it well or if he's hitting 450-foot homers,
Sure.
it's going to get seen and he'll have
Has
a
to.
chance. Versus way back in the day, who knows? If it's a small school and nobody really knew anything,
Yeah.
it might just get passed over.
Right. No, it's really cool. So let's go back to that. Matt Blake finds you. You go ahead and we go over to the now Guardians organization. Another org that I think is pretty, advanced when it comes to how they look for guys,
Hmm.
and things that they're looking for. And obviously Matt Blake, has done a tremendous job and has done what he's done. So, what did they see? Obviously they saw the one video of you slipping and falling,
Uh-huh.
but what was kind of something that maybe they saw, that they were like, hey, we can make this work.
It's a good question. I'm sure that they were at the pro day that we did that year, so they kind of had a little bit more information as far as my arsenal. Um, and I think it was really just through my trainer and their connection, and maybe looking at numbers, past video from when I was with the Giants potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what they knew, but when they brought me in, they said, "Hey, we'd have our analytics meetings, and they said, hey, you have a really unique movement profile.
Mm-hmm.
Let's like tap into that."
Got it. Cool. Um, so we go through that. We're with the Guardians now. Sorry. Um, how where did you learn from them? Obviously, how many years were you with them?
Just one,
Just
just
the
the
one.
2019 season.
Gotcha. So what was something you took away from that organization that maybe you liked a little bit more or less, or what were some of the things that they did really well, you think?
They did everything well. From my time with the Giants, which I don't have anything bad to say about, but it was very much more old school at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't a guy, they weren't really going to give you too much love. But if you would have seen how they treated me with the Indians, you would have thought I was their number one pitching prospect.
Really?
They gave me everything I could have wanted, as much information, as much help as I could have needed.
That's cool.
Yeah,
And that's from the top down, you'd say? Like,
I think so. Yeah.
that's really cool. Because I think there are a lot of orgs out there that maybe aren't the best when it comes to that stuff. So to hear, the ones that do it right is refreshing,
Hmm.
especially for guys that are going into those type of organizations, and maybe traded from somewhere else. It's good to see. Um, so we go through that, right? We're with the Indians, the Guardians, for 1 year. Then where?
Then I go. COVID season happens.
Mm-hmm.
I get lucky enough to go play for St. Paul again,
Oh,
in the
cool.
American Association. They were
Nice.
one of the two COVID leagues. So I had a really good year
Okay.
there and was able to throw.
This is in 2020.
Yeah, this is during 2020.
When did they open back up?
They didn't open up till later because we had to be based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for the
Okay.
first month and a half.
Gotcha. Why?
Um,
Why was that?
they were open and Minnesota was closed, so they wouldn't let us play in the stadium yet.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it feels like that was yesterday, but it was almost 4 years ago now,
that's crazy.
which is wild to think about. Um, but yeah, that's cool. So going from that, you go through the COVID year. Obviously, that messed with a lot of people from not only like a contract side of things, but a development side of things
Hmm.
too, because you couldn't go and train where you needed to train. A lot of places were closed, and it screwed with basically, your journey as a baseball player
Hmm.
for a lot of guys. Speak to that year kind of. How did you make sure you were getting the necessary work in before, you had to report for St. Paul for two, I
Yeah,
guess.
I was really lucky that year. I lived with a buddy in Florida.
Florida was
Yeah,
pretty, yeah.
Florida's a good spot to be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he had built his own training facility, not facility, but he had a cage. He had a couple mounds,
Hmm.
plyo walls and everything. And but
Cool.
him and I would go throw. He was a really good pitcher in his own right. We would go throw every day. We would get guys lined up for live ABs. So we were having a full regular off season.
That's legit.
He built a full gym in his garage, built his own squat racks and everything.
I
And
love it.
so we had pretty much a normal training session, as much as you could get.
That's great. I think that again is so important for guys. Like, there's gonna be things that aren't gonna go your way.
Hmm.
COVID, you can't really control that. But you have to find a way, right? Like, there's always got to be a way to get your work in and those type of things. So, I love hearing those type of stories. So, let's fast forward a little bit to 2023 this year. How'd you find us?
I had met Ryan Weiss, who trains here,
Okay.
playing together in High Point, and
Yep.
I'd heard about y'all before, and heard nothing but good things. Met Ryan, and he hyped it up as much as he could.
Hmm.
Said he went from sitting 90 to now he's 2 to 6, 3 to 6. Um, I finally just decided to pull the trigger. I'd had since my surgery at the end of 21, I haven't really bounced back from whether it's velo, mechanics, how the pitcher that I know I can be.
Hmm.
Um, Basically just said, let's do it.
Yeah.
Full send it.
Talk about your surgery in 21 too, because a lot of people I think need to know. There's so many guys that are going through that. That need, I don't know if it's advice, but almost like reassurance that you can come out the other end, kind of.
For
So
sure.
talk about that process going through surgery. Your mental and emotional, dealings with it.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a weird thing because it wasn't a big surgery. It was just a little cleanup,
Right.
shaving down some bone.
Right.
There was kind of a 50-50 chance. The doctor said that he would have to repair my whole rotator cuff when he went in.
Hmm.
If he did that, he said I would be done. So I went into it not really knowing what was going to happen. Luckily, didn't have to touch the cuff. Cuff
So did
was,
he tell you that right when you woke up? Like, you're good?
yeah, that was like my first question. It's like,
Yeah.
we good? It's like, yeah, we didn't repair it. We're good.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of grinded through rehab. It was supposed to only take, a couple of months, but I was in pain for 7, 8 months after that.
Really?
Yeah. And then, you know,
Where was the pain? Like, what kind of pain?
anterior shoulder pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of what led to the surgery with the impingement and the bone spur that I did have.
Right.
It was just like an ice pick stabbing me right in the shoulder every time.
Really?
And I was like, man, we took this out. Why am I still in pain? Luckily, the guy I was working with mechanically at the time, he had gone through a similar surgery and was had a similar pain.
Hmm.
He gave me a few tips of like what to really hammer. Hammer the subscap was the biggest thing,
Really?
and almost overnight it went away.
Huh.
Just a
It's
very
kind of,
overlooked thing, I guess.
yeah, the subcaps is something. It hurts,
Yeah.
especially when you're doing any sort of manual or like soft tissue work on it. It's a very neglected part of the shoulder. It's obviously it's a hard one to find too, 'cause you
Hmm.
kind of dig in your armpit a little bit. But that's one that I think a lot of kids and people need to address, because it's one of those things where it gets tight and you really don't realize it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's cool to hear. So, obviously you found us. We're here sitting today. Did you think, hey, maybe this is something maybe where, from your own standpoint, like, hey, I kind of want to work here one day, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of, pairing my love of baseball, player development, a little bit of the biomechanical background that I, got from college, and the way that this place operates. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So like I want your thoughts on, our process, I guess, and, what are some of the bigger things that you've learned so far in learning, how we go about things, especially from a biomechanical standpoint.
I mean, because total process wise, this place kind of blew me away more than what I thought I would get out of it.
Hmm.
The whole assessment process was amazing. It gave you a perfectly clear picture of where you're deficient, what you need to get better at, but also what you're good at too. So it's not like you're sitting there
Yeah.
and now you suck, you suck,
Yeah.
you suck.
Punched in the face all
Yeah.
the time. Yeah, that's cool. What were some of the things, like, when you go through your own assessment, and we'll just talk about the 3D briefly here. What did you learn about yourself that maybe you didn't know beforehand?
I think the biggest thing, at least from mentally for me, was that I have a really good arm action,
Hmm.
which is something that I always thought was bad or stabby. So I'd always in season, off season, just be
Play around.
playing around with it.
Right.
Now I don't even have to think about it, which is nice.
Yeah, and I think, arm action a lot of times is more aesthetics, right? Like we kind
Sure.
of see what we see in our video and those type of things, but when we get the actual data on it, we can see like, okay, are you on time? Okay, how's the external rotation look? How's the horizontal abduction look? Then we can kind of make our assessment or our final decision on like, hey, maybe we need to change this or not. So
Hmm.
I think that's what's so beautiful about having the best tech in the world is because so many kids come in like, oh, I mean, like you're saying with the arm action, like, oh, my arm action sucks. And then we go and do it, and it's like, dude, it actually doesn't.
Yeah.
There's some other things that maybe we need to address here. So, no, that's great. So when we're talking like player development, what are some of the big buzzwords or things that you know you take into account? Like, what are some of your favorite metrics that we identify in here or just elsewhere? Like you can go from a pitch design standpoint or a qualis standpoint, force plates. Like, what are some of the ones that if you're working with a kid, what are you mainly looking for?
I'm gonna see how they're moving first.
Yeah.
I think pelvis action is going to be the
Hmm.
biggest driver. I very much start from, I guess, ground up or beginning of the motion up, and
Hmm.
think if you can fix a lot of things at the beginning, you're going to solve a lot of downstream issues.
Sure. So like when we're talking, the pelvis here, right? Like, what are some of the things that have you helped you? Because that's something that we're working on right now for you is moving the hips a little bit more efficiently, where we can allow everything to kind of stay closed
Hmm.
up top. What are some stuff? What are some cues or things that you've learned to kind of help you along that on that road so far?
Yeah, maybe it was because I was a little bit off with my thinking of it in the past, but really firing the hips into foot strike, I think has been very helpful. 'Cause before doing a lot of dry work or slowing things down, you almost tend to keep the hips closed and then try and work them as your front foot's already down.
Mm-hmm.
And when I feel the hips go into foot strike and I'm able to hold some counter rotation,
Mm-hmm.
everything else just snaps
Comes
and
along.
feels easy.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Um, obviously player development, from when you started even in pro ball to now is come so far.
Hmm.
You know, when you're looking at, let's say, a pro guy that maybe comes in and wants to throw a bullpen, what are some of the things from a TrackMan perspective or, pitch design perspective? What do you look for?
Anything outlier.
Yeah.
We had a guy in here the other day, plus vertical break, plus VAA, I'd imagine.
Hmm.
Kind of hit or miss with the TrackMan, but
Yeah.
um, anything outlier, whether it's, negative vert on a sink, negative vert on a splitter, good sweepers. That's what's
That
hot right now.
that is what's hot right now as a sweeper. And what's funny? Actually, watching some of those playoff games, like it actually pops up as sweeper in
Hmm.
the like on the TV broadcast. Like instead of it's like forcing fastball, saying like instead of slider, it's sweeper now. So that pitch is really kind of taken over the game. What are your thoughts on it?
As far as sweepers
Yeah,
or
just as a whole,
its
like
emergence,
yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's like a guy like Ottavino, he's always thrown a sweeper. So,
His whole career, I feel like.
I'm sure people get into the semantic debate of, oh, it's just a slider.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're on the hitting side of things, it's going to be very important to know if it's going to be a gyro, like bullet spin,
Hmm.
tight slider, or if it's going to be a lot bigger and sweep more.
Yeah, yeah. I think, what's so unique about it is obviously the ones that are able to hold vert, that to a hitter's eye, like they're so used to seeing a breaking ball, like a slider fall down,
Hmm.
as they're trying to meet at impact. And now there's balls that are just continuing to just go across the
Yeah.
zone at 85 miles an hour at 18 inches plus, and they're holding vertical. So
Hmm.
like, for me, in this world, it's like, okay, how do we figure out what's next? The sweeper obviously has become a hot topic. What's next in this world of player development, in this, if you want to call it pitch design, whatever, like what do you think's coming?
This might be a little out there, but
No,
you
out there is
might
good.
you might end up with some sort of like platoon system within organizations matching bat path, like bat angle,
Hmm.
with flat bat path guys are going to be great for the high vert guys.
There's
Or
some orgs that are doing that.
really,
Oh yes,
so
like
they're already there.
yeah, a lot of guys will, and you can't, I don't want to go too in depth, but they'll have certain guys that they identify as, okay, this is your pocket in the lineup. this is who you're going to probably face.
Hmm.
And it's because of, hey, we have all the metrics on their swing and we have all the metrics on your pitches. Your arsenal plays really well for them.
Sure.
And usually it ends up being like, hey, it's a lefty that loses their barrel pretty early in the swing. It dips out of it. Hey, let's get a guy with a good four seam that can kind of really hone in on that top, arm side quadrant
Hmm.
where that barrel is being
Yeah.
lost. And then, you can throw a breaking ball off that same window, those type of things. So that's something that I think some of the more advanced orgs are doing. And they're hiring people that are much smarter than myself and, anywhere, really anywhere. Like there's some guys that are just complete geniuses when it comes to this stuff. Um, but I'll ask that question again, like from a what do you think about like a pitch? Like, do you think there's a pitch out there that maybe we don't know about, or maybe it's something like a knuckleball that we have already seen, but it could be utilized a little bit differently. You know what I mean? Like, is there
Yeah.
something out there?
I really don't know. I don't think so. 'Cause with how many different guys there are, how many different movers there are, you probably feel like you've seen just about every type of profile that you could get. You get a Kenley Jansen, like a ride cut. You get,
That's big. I mean, that's kind of pairing with the sweeper. That's been like the big thing now, like
yeah.
ride cut. That's what people want.
As far as profiles, I feel like everything's already been thrown. Now it's
Hmm.
just going to be the back and forth cat and mouse game of,
Yeah.
what's hot right now. Maybe the sinker's going to come back,
Yeah.
which, you see some guys who are super successful with that in an
Right.
era where you shouldn't be.
Yeah. Um, I think if we look at a lot of guys coming over from Japan, all the elite guys have really good splitters, and I
Hmm.
know that's already kind of becoming a hot topic within that in this realm. But I think there's something that maybe like Otani or who's the guy that throws like a billion, Roki Sasaki.
Oh, yeah, Roki Sasaki.
He's got a really good one. There's something that they probably do a little bit different with theirs, and I don't know what it is yet. And I'm really curious to see if that's something that can be taught. Because they've done it their whole lives. I don't know if it's, just in that adaptation type thing where they've been throwing splitters for so long, their forms and whatever, their dexterity is just different.
Hmm.
There's so many different, things that we have to consider. But I'm really interested to see the future of the splitter and seeing, its impact,
Sure.
especially in the high school ranks. But,
Hmm.
you know, that's just for another day, I guess. I think when you saw Kirby throw that knuckleball to honor Tim Wakefield was really, really cool as well. I think that's something that might be played around with just because the lack of spin that it creates, even if you're throwing it hard, it could act like a splitter.
Hmm.
I don't know. There's different
No, I think
different
you're right.
things that I've played around with in my head. I didn't know if there was something that you're like, oh, dude, like we could do this with a curveball or a backup slide. I don't.
I guess Verlander does it really well with those top of the zone curveballs.
Hmm.
Good luck hitting one of
Yeah,
those.
those ones that come off the rooftop
Yeah,
almost like it.
especially as they're calling the top of the zone more
Oh, yeah.
consistently. I think that'll be.
Yeah, because you can't do anything with it.
Mhm.
It's something that you see out the hand, you give up on automatically. But if you can create that spin late, to be able to drop it in the top of the zone, I mean,
Mhm.
it's very risky. Risk
Yeah,
reward is tough there, but I mean, a guy like Verlander who's done this for 100 years now, I feel like can do that on the regular. But yeah, so let's move a little bit, and we won't talk too much more about this, but just the importance of strength training, especially for the younger kids.
hmm,
Um, we so many people, oh, it's baseball, you don't want to lift, you don't want to lift heavy. What do you see? What age would you kind of recommend a guy start kind of tinkering with their own strength training?
I'd say the earlier the better. I know a lot of people get all caught up in, oh, you can't lift early, it's going to hurt your growth plates, but that's all been pretty much debunked. I think if you do it in a safe way, whether it's just teaching the basics, the foundational movements, whether
Hmm.
when you're younger and then closer to puberty, maybe you start bumping up the weight, and
Sure.
because up until that point, how much can you really gain until you have those hormones that you really need?
Not much, I would
Um,
imagine.
but if you can, create some great patterns, and then once you're able to, just start packing on the pounds from there.
Right.
It's for me in my career, and I've been super lucky outside of the one surgery, which isn't necessarily, um, you know, I don't think it was really strength related. It wasn't any major issue. It was just a bone spur that had been growing there.
Right.
But my strength is what's probably saved me. I've thrown 730 pro innings and
It's crazy.
pretty much missed no time.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of exactly what we want to do here as far as like, we talk with the younger kids. You definitely want to, you know, put those foundational movements, into their brain so that they can, as they kind of develop and get into lifting, those things aren't just completely new.
Hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you on that for sure. I think strength is extremely important in just overall athleticism of being good at pitching or at really any sport.
Hmm.
Obviously how we go about that might be different compared to a football player,
Sure.
but there is a level of foundation that we need to be successful. So, again, like, we're excited to have you on here. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Your knowledge and things that I think what makes working here really cool is that there isn't a cookie cutter way of doing things. Like I think learning from other people and getting other people's opinions is so crucial just to a company's development,
Hmm.
right? You can't be so inside the box that it it hinders your own growth.
Sure.
So like I get this saying from Lane Kiffin, but he actually says like, we don't think outside the box, we create a new box.
I
So like
like
I
that.
I kind of like that too for us because it allows us to really, outside the box is one thing, but like let's do something completely different
Hmm.
and new and make it interesting.
Create a new
So,
landscape.
what's your last message to the people that are, going to be working with you? What do you bring to the table?
Teach you a lot about pitching. Going to teach you how to compete. Um, Within that, I'll probably sprinkle in a bunch about whether it's college life, high school life, progressing your way up, whether it's going the undrafted route. I think I've been through a little bit of everything and played a little bit of everywhere. Where
Sure.
that combined with my love of, I guess, the strength and conditioning side, Matt's got that covered. But um, I was really doing my best to help you become the best you.
Yeah.
And there's no one way to do that. So we can, let's get started.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.